Has any of your students ever told you that they want to be fluent? Probably, right? And you still find it difficult to help them speak more naturally. Hi everyone, and to our friends in the Philippines, ¿cómo está? I'm Rubinho for What is ELT, and today we're answering the question, what is fluency? So stay tuned for definition, examples, and of course, tips to help make your lessons even more effective. Let's go! Fluency is kind of a difficult word to define because it means different things for different people. When our students come to us and tell us that they want to be fluent, sometimes what they actually mean is that they want to achieve high proficiency level, or in other words, good overall command of the English language. And when we turn to ELT authors, things can get even more confusing. Brunfit, for example, talks about natural language use, whereas Thornbury talks about producing and maintaining language in real time. Some definitions seem a bit old-fashioned or backward-looking, especially in our times when we talk so much about English as a lingua franca. One such example is a definition by Richards and Schmidt that places a lot of emphasis on expressions like native-like or normal. Most of the authors nowadays agree that you don't have to imitate or try to sound like a native speaker in order to be fluent in a language. We see fluency as the ability to communicate successfully in real-life situations without strain on either the listener or the speaker. In that sense, here are some characteristics of fluent speech. It does contain pauses, but the pauses are there to organize ideas rather than to look for words. It also contains fillers and discourse markers to keep communication flowing more naturally. Sounds in fluent speech are connected naturally and effortlessly. Mind you, when you're fluent, your speech does contain imperfections, such as reformulation, form starts, redundancies, but these are done naturally, without causing any discomfort. Tip number 1, balance accuracy-oriented and fluency-oriented activities. What we mean by fluency-oriented tasks are those in which the objective is the meaningful exchange of ideas rather than just the practice of a certain structure or vocabulary. One example of this is you can ask your students to get their phones and show a picture taken during the last trip and describe it to a friend, and tell them what they were doing when the picture was taken. Now, if you really want to maximize the effect, you can give some feedback to the learner and ask them to describe the picture again to a different peer. Hopefully, they'll be able to take the feedback on board and speak more fluently this time. Tip number 2, instead of teaching words in isolation, consider teaching lexical chunks or functional language to your learners. The idea is that instead of building sentences from scratch with the words they know, students will be able to access these ready-made chunks and communicate more promptly and more fluently. For example, in a lesson that involves advice, you can teach students phrases like, I think you could, maybe you should, if I were you, I would. All of these expressions are usually followed by the infinitive form of the verb, right? So students don't really have to worry about the grammar. They can memorize them and combine them with the infinitive of the verbs they already know to give useful advice in meaningful communication. Tip number 3, help students gain confidence before asking them to speak more freely. This can be done, for example, by carrying out drilling activities in which students notice and practice connecting the sound before engaging in conversation. If you want more tips on how to do that, I'll include a link to our post on drilling in the description below. And you can also check out our video on practice. Tip number 4, help your students use fillers in conversations. Fillers are phrases and expressions we use to buy ourselves time, organize our ideas, and introduce topics. Things like, you know, well, I mean, and fillers don't even need to be words. Sounds like, they can be very helpful to buy ourselves time and make us sound more fluent. I hope this video was useful and now you feel more encouraged to help your students develop fluency. But let us know what you think. In the comment section below, ask us any questions you have, or even better, tell us what you do to make your students more fluent. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and join us in our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Hanggang sa muli! Tip number 4, help your students well, you know.